What up, Knights fam? Today we discussing mental health, man. It's a topic that's incredibly serious. For a long time, I think it was something that was shameful or taboo, but big ups to the church for addressing it and starting to deal with it, because there's a lot more people struggling with mental health issues than we like to admit. So to everyone who's listening, we hope that you enjoyed the episode, and we pray that you find yourself not alone in this world. We love you guys so much. Here is Knights at the Round Table. And welcome to another episode of Knights at the Round Table. Tis your boy Manweezy. To my left is the Queen Angela Johnson.
Hello.
To the right is Be Real. We out here
Special guest Bonzo in my lap today.
You know what that reminds me of? What was it? What movie was it where that guy's like Carl?
I don't know.
He was like a rapper. It was a white guy.
Damn, I want to know now.
I'm gonna look that up.
I thought it was a commercial. Chia.
Speaking of commercial, let's commercial this juice buds real quick.
So we're not drinking wine this episode because in honor of my juice cleanse, I'm not ready for the alcohol yet, but we are drinking a mocktail, Juice Buds mocktail. This is their juice called Fruit, F-R-O-O-T, and it has orange, pineapple, carrots, and I think that's it. And then I put a little bit of LaCroix in there to make it like a little mocktail. So cheers, guys.
Cheers
to health.
Hey, what'd you put in it?
Well,
mocktail? Makes it a mocktail?
Just some LaCroix sparkling water.
Oh, that's it?
Yeah, anything that's like doesn't have the alcohol in it, but you'd kind of mix is considered mocktail.
Damn, I gotta learn this stuff. Hey, so today we just want to welcome everybody here and say thank you. We want to shout out all our Patreon members. Thank you for holding us down. If y'all don't know, we do have a Patreon. You can check it out in the link below.
Exclusive content.
Yeah, exclusive content. You can
VIP status.
Zoom with us once a month. I mean, I'm really enjoying and loving what's going on in the Zoom community.
Yeah, I mean, literally just before this episode, we're having a conversation with one of our Patreon members talking about what we're going to talk about. And
yeah, so much access. If you guys are really feeling this and want to actually be a part, like not like we're not going to say you're going to be a part and then not make you a part, but like actually be a part. We have once a month Zoom calls for the VIP members where we'll literally talk about what we're going to discuss or what we'd like to discuss. And you guys weigh in and you actually get to say what you hear and what you feel other people would like to hear. So it's pretty dope. If y'all want to come join, there's multiple tiers. So again, shout out, check out the link below. We love you guys. And if you are watching on YouTube, please hit subscribe, hit the like. It helps the whole algorithm.
Yep.
Same thing if you're listening to all the other places that is not video. We would appreciate it. It'll help us grow. And we love you. Today we're going to be talking about mental health issues within the church, how the church handles them.
Yeah.
If the church handles them.
Yeah.
Why the church should handle them.
Why the church should handle them.
Yeah.
Do any of us know anyone personally that has been in the church that have mental health issues?
I mean, I have my own mental health issues.
Dang, babe. Go ahead,
And
tell
I'm
me
in the
about
church.
it. Go ahead.
So, me.
Samesies. We're twins.
Yeah.
I guess that's a good way to go into it.
Well, yeah. I mean, I've talked about on previous episodes just about everything from my anxiety to bouts of depression that I've had. And anxiety is the most, what's the word? Prevalent in my life.
I'm going to look up a list.
But yeah, I know there's different levels of every mental illness that people could have. You can be on medication. You can not be on medication. I am not on medication for my anxiety. I have a really good friend of mine who is on medication for her anxiety. And we both are in therapy. We both have our tools that we use, our breathing techniques and things like that. And my first therapist was actually a Christian therapist. She wasn't from the church, but she was a Christian therapist and was a part of the church. I didn't find her through the church, but I found her through a mutual friend. I don't remember growing up hearing about like therapy in church or anything like that. But it was also, I think, like a different time back then.
Absolutely.
So I knew about like counseling. There was always like counselors, but it wasn't ever called therapy. And I knew about like pre-married counseling and stuff like that. But I didn't know anybody who was like actually in therapy when I was young and in the church.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was for me growing up, it was like if your marriage was like really on the rocks, then you guys went to like couples therapy. But the actual thought of like going to therapy to keep like your mental health like in check and in a good place was like unheard of. Like, if anything, the space that I grew up in, at least, everything was so spiritualized that it was like, oh, you don't actually have to accept anxiety. Like, it's not really like a real thing. It's not real. Like, it's a spiritual battle, young man. You know, you just got to combat that with prayer, because the weapons of our warfare are mighty.
Right.
For God has not given you a spirit of fear, but one of power, you know, all this sorts of stuff. And so it was something that was like so disconnected. And when it's phrased that way, and when it's put into that kind of category, the people who are actually struggling with that and trying to process that on a daily basis, what ends up happening is they don't feel comfortable enough to talk about it. And when you're dealing with mental illnesses and disorders like that, like, the more isolated that you become, the harder it becomes to fight that battle. The battle is already hard enough to fight within itself. And so the other thing too that happens in a lot of like spiritual spaces is these things become, because there's such a spiritual battle, there is this underlying root, which is usually associated with a mistake that you made, or a sin that you committed, or a sin that you're possibly like hiding right now,
or a lack of faith in whatever area that you're trying to get over with.
Exactly. Like, oh, the reason you probably have depression is because, oh, you're probably addicted to pornography or something, like, just like, you know, all this sorts of stuff. And so it was interesting, because I feel like within this last 2 years, there's been a little bit of a shift that I've seen, at least, in people within the church space and pastors and preachers, like, all of a sudden now talking about mental health. Now, before that, there was a very, very small niche of people who were speaking on that. But I think living during a pandemic and seeing the effect that it's had on people, and then when you look at millennials and Gen Z, of like, there was this one, I think it was on Gallup or Barna, but they had taken the survey and they had estimated that 2 out of every 5 millennials between 18 and 35, millennials, Gen Z, struggle with anxiety. So you're talking about 40% of people.
Wow.
And these young people are in churches and they're in these spaces. And so it's a conversation that the church has been behind in, for sure. But it's a little bit better now that they're starting to have that conversation, because in my opinion, the church in so many ways, I feel, is ill-equipped to take on these people and help them through this process. Right? I mean, in the same research, they said that only 30% of pastors today feel actually well equipped to help people with mental, and not just mental, but emotional illnesses as well. And so
I have some statistics here as well that I was looking up on Christianity Today, and they surveyed pastors and people that go to the churches, and there was a large percent of pastors, like 71%, said it should be a medicine should be used in conjunction with spiritual principles. So they were saying there was only 1% of pastors that were like, never use medicine, and you should not use medicine, or if you should, it's like a very last resort. But 71% actually said that you should use medicine with spiritual principles. And then let's see, they were also saying that they had resources in their church. A lot of these pastors were saying they do have resources in their church and things like that. But the gap was, when they surveyed people in the church, they didn't know about the resources because they don't talk about them in the church. And that's when the pastors were saying that, sorry, it's a whole paragraph of stuff. 33% spoke to their church bodies more than once a year, only 33%, but 49% said they rarely or never speak on the subject of mental health to their churches in sermons or large group messages. So they're not addressing it from the pulpit. And if you're not addressing it from the pulpit, then how are you telling your congregation that you have these resources out there? And so the people in the congregation that are having these mental health issues don't even know that the church they attend may have some resources for them. But a lot of these churches do not have resources.
And the question is like, why? why I think that there's like a shame
Absolutely.
stigma. Like when I'm in that same article, babe, here's a bunch of like statistics, but a little bit more. When we surveyed Protestant pastors, the first thing we discovered is that they do in fact have experience with mental illnesses. This is what they mean. Approximately 3 out of 4 pastors said that they knew at least one family member, friend, or congregant who had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder. So they knew someone.
Wow, a bipolar.
Yeah. Close to the same number, 74%, said they knew someone diagnosed with clinical depression. More than half, 57%, said they knew at least 3 people who fell into that category. In terms of counseling, almost 6 in 10, 59%, said that they had counseled at least one person who was eventually diagnosed with an acute mental illness. Perhaps even more important, 23% of pastors indicated that they had battled a mental illness of some kind on a personal level, including 12% who said it was formally diagnosed. These findings are confirmed by the National Alliance of Mental Illness and similar numbers within the general population. So I think it's interesting that as it gets closer, and this, again, I think if you're going to interview pastors, I wonder how many would actually just come out and say, because it goes from 74% know someone all the way down to 12 who admit that they are diagnosed with it.
Yeah, because that's been the interesting thing within the last couple of years. Like we've seen some like notable pastors or preachers or like pastors' sons or daughters. I think it's been mostly sons, but I'm just going to assume that daughters as well, who have taken their own lives, unfortunately. And I think in a lot of ways, like obviously that's extremely sad for anybody to take their life. But when you think about how close it is to home, like it's I think it's served as a wake up call in some ways of like, oh man, even our beloved leaders are not immune to this.
Right.
Like no one's invincible to this. And recently Apple TV, they've done this kind of like short docu-series, and it's entitled The Me You Can't See. And it's led by Oprah, and she interviews some very notable people, including Prince Harry, who talks about some of his like things that he's been through. And he talks about just the trauma and the anxiety and the depression after losing his mother, and essentially not having any resources to like really process that. And now kind of in this place of like trying to be healthy. And it's incredible, but just even that title of like, it's so powerful when you really think about that. Like there's obviously, when it comes to mental health, there's a lot more people who struggle with this than they would like to admit. There are a lot more pastors, there are a lot more preachers, and it really is the me that you can't see.
I wonder if it's because honestly that they don't know. Like they don't know. Like I'm literally Googling what are mental disorders or what are mental illness.
I could give you.
So it can be anywhere from. Or do you have a list? I'm looking at one right now.
So like some of the most common types, you got clinical depression, right? Characterized by persistently depressed mood or loss of interest in activities causing significant impairment in daily life. You have anxiety disorder, right? Characterized by those feelings of worry, anxiety, fear. And those feelings can sometimes be strong enough to like interfere with just daily tasks. You got bipolar disorder, dementia, attention deficit, hyperactivity disorder, schizophrenia, OCD, autism, PTSD. Those are kind of a few of the main ones, but here's some that are that they list.
Real quick, just to tag on that, some of those that you said, to give you a picture of how many people suffer with those things, like borderline personality disorder, 3.5 million people in the United States. Obsessive compulsive disorder, 3 million people. Post-traumatic stress disorder, 9 million. Anxiety disorders, 48 million. Bipolar, 7 million. Schizophrenia, 1.5 million people. And then major depressive episodes, 19.4 million people suffer with these things.
Yeah.
This article that I read was something like it lists a bunch of stuff that seems almost really kind of normal in betterhelp.com. So it says it does talk about bipolar, it does talk about depression, but then it also mentions stuff like postpartum depression.
Yeah, absolutely.
Premenstrual dysphoric disorder, which it just says more severe than PMS. Symptoms of this mental condition include mood swings, irritability, other signs of depression, along with cramps, bloating, pain. Like, you can have that and not even think that that's a thing.
Right.
Like, that's hella normal.
You just think, oh, I get bad periods.
Right. Generalized anxiety disorder. Then there's obsessive compulsive disorder. Then there's panic disorders, which are panic attacks. There's phobias, which are just mental disorders where you feel fear. It triggers something. Feelings of dying, losing control, or fainting. I think I kind of have a phobia of like having to take a crap on a plane.
What?
When I'm going up, you know, having to take a crap and I won't have a bathroom.
I don't think that's a phobia.
That's a total phobia.
Shitophobia.
It's an insecurity that you have.
That's a phobia.
You wouldn't get on the plane if that was
I
a
would
phobia.
get on the plane, but when I get on the plane, the worst part about it is taking off and landing, because I'm like, oh, this is the time where I can't get up. And if I have to use the bathroom, it's going to suck. You know what I'm saying? I have a big fear of that. That's a phobia. Don't mess with my disorders.
Okay.
Social anxiety, eating disorders, anorexia, bulimia, binge eating.
Yeah.
Binge eating, you know, trauma-related disorder, post-traumatic, acute stress disorder. Impulsive disorder, kleptomania, pyromania. There's so many where it's like you may not even know it's a disorder that can be qualified as this.
Yeah. And I feel like there's probably a lot of people living in shame and mad at themselves when they get too emotional about something, or after they flipped out on their best friend and almost ruined that relationship again. And then they go hide in the bathroom and are like, why the F do I do this to myself? You know what I mean? Because they don't know that maybe they have bipolar, or they are, you know, whatever it is that could be something that they're dealing with, and they may not even know they need to. We actually have friends who've been married for a few years, and they've had some discourse in their marriage, and they've tried to work through different things in therapy, and finally the husband was diagnosed with a mental illness and got some medication. But they went through like 8 years of marriage, just like fighting and like trying to like understand each other, not knowing that her husband had a mental illness.
Wow.
And until he was finally diagnosed and got help for it, now they're able to work on their marriage in a different way and make sense of some things, you know?
Yeah.
Growing up, I played on a bunch of different travel basketball teams, but one of my basketball teams that I played on, we had a coach who we just thought was just like, we just labeled him when we were young. We're like, oh, dude, coach, you know, I won't say his name, is crazy, man. That dude's crazy. Bro, he's lost his mind. And like, you know, every practice, and I played with him a shortened season, so I didn't play with this team for a long time. But it was always of like, what coach are we going to get tonight? And at that time, I'd never heard about like people being bipolar. Like I never understood that. I'm in 6th grade. And so we just thought, dude, this guy is just like, at any point, you just flip out and just like, can you imagine like a grown man just like cussing out these 6th grade boys?
Wow.
You know, like just going off. Well, that season was what it was. Years later, and I'm talking like 6th grade, that would have been 2002 or 2003 for me or whatever. 2 years ago. So you're talking like years later. I'm talking with his son who was on the team with me. And he was talking about how his dad like went off the deep end. Like it's like insane. Like the family got split apart. He has no relationship with his dad, but it came out that his dad was bipolar.
Wow.
And he was a black man. And I feel like, especially in minority communities, some of these mental illnesses is like, it's in a weird way, it's like shamed upon even more. Because as a black man, there is this like, there is a higher expectation for you to be something special or to be something remarkable. And so with that, I mean, obviously most of these communities who are marginalized don't have the same resources that other communities have.
Right.
And so with that, there's also this like added stigma. So people in those communities usually suffer more when it comes to these things. So, and he also had this pride in the sense of like, I'm not trying to get help. And so even though he was like diagnosed with that, he wasn't taking the medication that he needed to. So he decided to kind of just do that and separate himself. And so I remember when he was telling me, I was like, oh my God, that makes so much sense why Coach was the way he was when we were growing up. Like this wasn't just him like, I hate you boys, I love you boys. Yeah. This was actually a part of him that he just could not shake.
That's hard.
So it's really insane when you think about it, because so many of us are affected by these things on a daily basis, whether we recognize that or not. And, you know, majority of people wouldn't characterize themselves as having excellent mental health, right? When we just lived through this pandemic, the numbers almost in every single category have gone down. Last year in 2019, only 49% of males and 37% of females would give their mental health rating excellent.
Wow.
2020, during the pandemic after, about 8% dropped in the male category and 10% dropped in female.
Wow.
So now only 41% of men would rate their mental health as excellent, and only 27% of women would rate their mental health as excellent. And then, I mean, even on this thing that I saw, this was on Gallup. So this is like a trusted source when they do their surveys and stuff. But even it goes down to party identification. It goes down to marital status. It goes down to age group. And it's interesting because, I'm not trying to get political here, but in this, the biggest drop was in the Republican Party. So in 2019, 56% of Republicans would give their mental health rating as excellent. 30% of Democrats would say it's excellent. But then over that past year, there was a 15% drop in the Republicans, and only a 1% drop in the Democrat, which is interesting because you think about all that's going on. And I'm not even going to get too deep into that. I don't need to. But it's kind of interesting when you think about there's so many things that are affecting our mental health. So it's not just, do you go to church? Do you not go to church? It has to do with your relationship status, married, not married, single, you got good friends, you don't have good friends. It comes down to the income that you're bringing in your household.
Yeah.
It comes down to race. It comes down to age. It comes down to sex. Like, all these things are constantly playing a part in shaping the status of our mental health.
Right. I was watching a Instagram video. I don't know if you saw this, but I don't know if it was Hollywood Unlocked or Vlad TV that posted it, but
Vlad is crazy.
there was a video of a guy who was driving, and I think he was a gamer, and he had like a following, but found out that his girl was cheating on him. And so he's driving and talking to his fans, making a video, and you can hear cops behind him.
No, this is real.
And he's just bawling. He's like, I just found out my girl lied to me. Cheated on me. And, you know, and he's just telling like live how he feels.
Whoa.
And he goes, I'm on my way to kill myself. I have a gun with me.
No.
And I'm sorry. He was a part of the car community, because he said, when I'm gone, just have a big car meet in my honor. And he's just crying. He's crying. And I'm like, oh my God, because your girl cheated on you. He's going to end his life. I don't know if he did. It was crazy. It's crazy. I'm going to look for it, but it just brought it up when you talked about relationship.
It's so tough. Like, I had this moment, this was literally 2 nights ago, and I'd gone to see the new Cruella movie, and it's great, by the way.
Is it good?
Like, to me, I'm like, yo, it's a classic. It was so good. I was oddly surprised. And
That's
so
awesome.
There's this AMC that I go to that's close to my house. It's in Burbank, and Burbank is obviously the headquarters of Disney. And so there's this one street when I drive back, and it's just a straight shot. There's nothing special about the street. Like, it's not driving down Sunset. It's not driving down Hollywood, which is dirty as hell. But for some reason, this street, since Maddie and I have been here in LA, is always so magical for me.
Which one is it?
Well, there's 2 of them. One, it's just Burbank. Like, you just drive down that street. There's all those little shops and stuff. And then the other one is Magnolia, which can go a long way.
Yeah. And
so I'm driving down. I have my windows down, and I am listening to some Mac Miller, and he has this one song, and it's like, it's always so magical to me. I don't even want to say it because I don't want anyone to steal the magic that I get from that song. and I had this moment, and I was just like, man, I am so thankful that I'm alive right now. And it took me back to this moment when I was living in China. I was about 2 hours north of Shanghai, and this was in August of 2015. So this is coming up on 6 years ago. And for about an hour, I deeply contemplated taking my own life. And it was crazy because I remember I was laying in bed. I was living on the 50th floor of this hotel. And the way that the window could open, like a full person, big person, could slip right through the window.
Wow.
And the thought, I was battling pretty severe depression during that time, was that really at a low moment in my life, I felt so disconnected and isolated from all the things that really bring me life. So like my family, my friends, you know, things I like to do. I'm living in a foreign country. I don't speak the language, you know, and I'm injured. So I'm not playing basketball to the level that I want to play. And I remember thinking, man, how long would it take for someone to know that I passed? Would it even matter?
Whoa.
Like, would they even miss me? What would they say about me? Like, I think that they would move on pretty quick. And it was just that feeling of like utter hopelessness, helplessness, however you want to do it. And I remember I was laying in the bed and I was just weeping and I'm just crying and I'm like trying to reach out to God and I can't feel God. And so I remember I walk over to the window and I'm looking down and it felt like there was something in me that was like, just do it. Like,
wow.
Just do it.
Wow.
Oh.
And it was like something was like leaping out of me. And it really felt like it legitimately, like it was a battle for my life, not just like my physical body, but it felt like it was a battle for my soul.
Wow.
And so I lay on the bed and at this time, there's nobody for me to call. Everyone's asleep. I'm on the other side of the world. And so I go back in bed and I'm just laying there and I'm crying and I've run out of tears to cry. And it just kind of like after an hour or so, I just don't feel that strong urge anymore. And I think about that moment and I think about, man, like I would have missed out on so much. Literally 2 months later, I would meet Maddie and fall in love.
Wow.
I think about just the
Jesus.
joy that woman brings to my life. And I think, man, and I think about you guys. I think about the friendships here in LA. I think about the young people that I'm impacting. I think about me even being able to be a part of this podcast. Like all these things in my life that mean everything to me, I would have not been able to experience if I took my life.
Wow.
And I haven't had any thoughts of suicide since then. But it's interesting because I remember when I told that story after, I never even really talked about me contemplating suicide. I framed the story because there was so much shame in me feeling like I almost took my life. There was so much shame that I struggled with that I characterized it as me feeling a spirit of suicide in the area, like me discerning it and me fighting it, not even necessarily owning it. The fact that was actually me wanting to take my own life.
Yeah.
But like you spiritualized.
But I spiritualized it and I was like, oh man, it was like heavy warfare. Like I could feel it in the area. Like it was like somewhere out there, but it wasn't in me. And so it's funny because I've never actually shared that story. But now I think like I feel freedom and I don't feel shame in that. Like I'm like, yeah, I mean, there's a lot more people who have thought about taking their lives and contemplated it and maybe even failed at taking their lives than people who would be probably like brave enough to admit that.
Right.
And so I am so damn grateful and thankful that I was able to be strong enough in that moment to not take my life, because I just think about all the life, like the best part of my life has happened after that moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like it got better. It really
gets
did.
better.
And it really does. And so I don't know if there's anyone listening where you feel like you are in this like dark space where you feel like there was no one there with you, and you feel utterly hopeless and helpless and you were overwhelmed with that sense. Like, just want to say, hold on, and it gets better. And there are resources and there are people who will like care and love you and walk you through that. So
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, B.
I
I know that's a big deal for you.
Yeah.
yeah, I'm
Shit.
super sweaty right now, man. That's like, I was sharing my heart deep.
I know.
I'm hot.
Thank you.
It's so important. You talking about that hotel, like there was just
I wasn't done.
Oh, I'm sorry, babe. I thought you were just saying thank you.
No, I'm saying thank you for sharing that, because even just like people listening, no, they don't know us personally, but they can think like, oh, we have our lives together or something just
Yeah.
because we're on a podcast or in music or an actress or whatever. But it's just showing everyone who's watching and listening that we're all human.
Yeah.
And it's like disarming. And even I think it's so important what you said about how you tried to spiritualize it and do that Christian thing that we do sometimes and be like, man, I could feel it. It was like all around, like it was the spirit. And I'm not trying to say that's wrong. Like if you feel a spirit somewhere, because I definitely believe in like energy and spirits. When
Absolutely.
you touch down in a city and you're like, whoa, something's like heavy here in this city. Like you can feel that.
Yeah.
But to be able to own that, sure, maybe the city had some sort of like heaviness and suicide spirit on it, but you had your own thing that you were working through.
Yeah.
And to be able to own that is powerful for you, and it's liberating for you. It's liberating for everybody who's listening. So thank you so much for sharing that and being brave enough to share that with us, especially because you said you've never shared that story before. Your family doesn't know these things about you. Like, this is, it was really brave of you. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah. It's one of those things where I now have moments, and again, I still struggle with depression. And I've found some better ways to like deal with my anxiety and stuff, but that's still a thing for me. But I'll have these moments, and I always feel like I sound crazy when I say it, but like understanding the backdrop of that story, I'll just have moments where I will literally just be like doing things where I'm listening to music and we're eating out at a nice restaurant, or I'm going to my favorite whiskey bar in Toluca Lake, and I'll just have these moments where I'm like, man, I'm living life. I'm alive.
Yeah.
And it like, to some people that might sound extremely cheesy, and that's okay. But when you think about, man, there was a point in time where I almost chose to take my own life. And the fact that I'm here alive today, thriving in ways, dude, that's a testimony.
Yeah.
Like that's a miracle. And the fact that I'm like, man, I'm alive. Like I'm living. Like that's amazing, you know? And that gets me super juiced sometimes, just at random moments. Like I'll just think to myself and I'll look around, group of friends or whatever, and I'm just like, man, I'm alive. This is awesome.
I love
Do you feel like you've identified the triggers that send you down that way? Because I'm like, I think about it and I'm like, there's the only time I've ever even, and I don't even know if I would qualify it as me considering suicide, but I think it was more like when a kid says it and doesn't understand what they're saying. So like when children say things and they don't really grasp the weight of it. I think I said it once before back in the days, and it was mainly around if I kept making a mistake, like if I kept crossing the line with a chick, and you know, while I was touring as a musician that was a Christian, and I was like, oh my God, God hates me. He's gonna expose me. Everybody's gonna know me for the fraud that I am. And part of me felt like it would be so much easier if I was just dead. And I don't know if I meant it. I felt like that was a true statement. Like if when I'm dead, I won't have to deal with this, and I feel so much shame and whatever. And then recently I was on Instagram, something popped up, a story of this really famous Brazilian singer who just got married to, I think it was like a judge or some like really like a lawyer. Did you hear about that?
Yep.
And he fell out the window of the hotel room because he was so afraid that his wife was going to
Well, he wasn't trying to commit suicide. He was trying to escape to the balcony below and slipped and fell and died.
Yes, I understand. But knowingly going off of a freaking a balcony, right?
Yeah.
Because you're so afraid of what you did, knowing that there's a possibility you might die. To me, there had to be something in his mind that triggered him to be like, I'm willing to risk my life because I'm so afraid of what's on the other side of me getting caught. So that's why I'm asking, like normal people I don't want to diss them, but I'm saying I don't think that normal people think in that way.
Well, it's not
so
normal.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's why I'm trying to identify, is there triggers? Like,
absolutely.
is it on the other side of making a really bad mistake? Is it on the other side of doing something that you're ashamed of? Or is the trigger something you see, or when you know what I'm saying? I've never struggled with depression. So that's why I'm asking the question of, do you think that there's triggers that you've been able to identify?
Oh, absolutely. For me, I'm at a much different place because I understand myself better. And I think during that time, again, the conversation on mental health within the church was at a completely different stage than it is now. So I will admit that. So back then, I mean, there were some things within me that hadn't been resolved. There were some deep-seated lies that I believed about myself and about God that kept me, I think, longer in those cycles of depression than I needed to be. And I shared on a podcast earlier, it was last season, but it was an experience I had on New Year's Eve, and I had a bad trip where it was a crossfade between alcohol and edible. And I realized the deep thing about myself was that I really believed that God didn't love me and that heaven didn't actually accept me. So I think in 2015, I didn't understand that about myself. I didn't know that I believed that deep down inside about God.
Right.
So when you don't believe that this ambivalent, all-powerful, gracious, kind God really loves you and that heaven will really accept you, it's kind of like, for me growing up in the church space, like, heaven and God are everything. My entire life is centered around these very things. So when you don't actually believe in the goodness and the mercy of that centered thing, you have no center. You have no purpose, really. And so it was going to be a lot easier to take my life at that moment, because I'm like, I don't really believe that this thing out there. And it's funny because, I mean, like, I'm a couple months from being hired on staff at a church. And so those are a few things. And I think there were even some childhood things in me that I've resolved now and I've processed and I've walked through. So it was kind of an unfortunate thing. And now I think with people, sometimes it takes getting to that other side, not on the other side of suicide, but going through like a depressive bout or something like that, for people to understand themselves better and what those triggers are. But I also think that there's resources to help you identify triggers before something like that seriously happens. Like, you don't have to experience the pain and the hurt just to discover something.
Right.
There are ways to understand those things before that happens.
Yeah.
What are some of those ways?
So I was talking to a friend recently who has really bad anxiety, and he's noticing that he has this pain in his body. He's gone to the doctor multiple times, and the doctors can't figure out what the pain is. They've done tests, CAT scans, all kinds of stuff. So when he gets the pain, he gets anxiety because he doesn't know what it is. Does this mean I'm dying? Is there like cancer and they just can't find it until it's too late and like all of that? And so every time he gets that pain, anxiety right away. And then he started noticing when he got anxiety about like anything else, he would get the pain. So then he's like, okay, is the pain causing anxiety, or is my anxiety actually causing physical pain in my body? Like, what are the things? Yeah. And so in trying to find out what his triggers were for his anxiety and for the pain, I was like, why don't you start keeping an anxiety journal, like a log of what did you eat? So when you start getting anxiety or you start getting that pain, start thinking about everything you ate the night before. What have you been thinking about? What's been like in the back of your mind? Are you stressed about work and your relationship? Start writing all of those things out. Like, where are you at in your finances? What are you watching on TV? What did you watch the night before you went to sleep? Like, what are the things? So you can start figuring out like, okay, you know what? I think I'm on social media too much and it's giving me anxiety, and maybe the anxiety is triggering the pain. Not quite sure how all the things correlate, but I do know that your thoughts are directly affecting your body and your health. You can watch the documentary called Heal on Netflix, and they interview a bunch of different people on there. And one of the guys on that documentary is an engineer who makes medicine for big pharma. And he talks about when they would do these case studies, and you know how they have like 100 people who have this illness, and they give 50 people the medicine and 50 people the placebo. And they said in the people who got the actual medicine, 50% of them, I'm making up the number at this point because I don't remember what it was, but it was this is the point. 50% of the people who got the real medicine saw an increase in their health. And then like 40% of the people who got the placebo also saw an increase in their health. But why is that? It's because they thought that they were taking medicine for their body that was going to help them. So they changed their thoughts. Their thought, instead of saying, I'm just dying away, their thought every time they took that pill was saying, I'm helping my body. I'm going to get better from this. So as they changed their thoughts, they changed their body. And some of them started seeing increase in their health in their body just from changing their thoughts. Wow. And this is coming from the engineer who makes the medicine, who runs all these tests for Big Pharma.
Yeah.
So I know that your thoughts are directly correlated to your health. And so that's just one way of trying to figure out like what your triggers are, is write them down. When you start feeling a type of way, start journaling, write it in your notes on your phone. Like, okay, what am I thinking about right now? What have I been stressing about? And put it all out. And then you keep track, and then you'll know hey, this person is toxic in my life, because every time I hang out with them, I get anxiety and I feel a type of way. And then you got to start making some boundaries with that person that's toxic in your life.
Yeah.
And little by little, in the same way you would do an allergy test and you get, sick every time you eat something, then you start, let's eliminate dairy, let's eliminate gluten, let's eliminate, red meat, whatever it is, until you can get to what your body doesn't respond to.
Yeah.
And that's one way of finding triggers in your life.
Yeah, that's really helpful. That's really good. I know for me, taking a break off social media has helped me tremendously.
Oh my God.
This year I've spent very little time on it. Like, I'm not like surfing through, swipe, double tap, swipe, double tap, send, LOL, So taking a break there. But then the other thing too is spending actual more time. And I know I've talked about this a lot, but spending more time in like contemplative prayer. So like, I'll just take moments where I literally like sit in my chair. I'll place my hands right here on my legs with my palms open. I'll close my eyes and I'll just begin to just dialogue with God within, and I'll just focus on my breathing. And it's helped me a ton with my anxiety. And there's been a few moments where I've been like, I'll wake up in the middle of the night and I'll start to have like a panic attack. It's happened probably like 3 or 4 times this year. And I've never really had that before. So that's like a new thing for me. And I'll wake up and I have this like, it's this fitness band. It's called a Whoop. And it's cool because it keeps track of like literally everything. And I wear it in the shower, yada, yada, yada. But it can give me like a live feed of my heart rate. And all of a sudden I'll start looking at my heart rate just going up. And I'm like, I start freaking out about my heart rate going up. And then all of a sudden I'm freaking out because I can't get my heart rate back down, and I'm freaking out, and I'm like, oh my God, and I'll literally just sit there, and then I'll just like focus on my breathing, and I'm just like, all right, okay, I'm here, I'm okay, I am right here, I'm okay. All right, God, you're here and we're okay, and just kind of lead myself through these things. And I kind of, one of the ways that I describe contemplative prayer is very centering. So it's less about you petitioning before God. It's less about, God, I really pray for my mom right now and her health. Like, Lord, I pray that you would, whatever that fill in the blank is on your prayer list. It's really just about you connecting with God within here right now. Like, that's it. That's the intention of that. And there's something powerful and centering about that. And so that's been something too that, because again, it borderlines on the thing of like meditation.
Yeah.
So it's essentially kind of the same thing. And that's a powerful tool for people who feel like, hey, I need something like right here, right now that'll kind of help me. And that's something. And then again, too, going to therapy is a huge help.
Yeah.
That's absolutely.
What's helped me with my anxiety, like for certain things, and mainly my anxiety really rests upon my stomach. For some reason, I just have, when I was a kid, this is how bad my anxiety was about the bathroom. When I was a kid, I lived in Kansas and I used the bathroom downstairs once, right? And I got a stomach ache in that bathroom. And so for the next 6 years that I lived in that little house, I never used that downstairs bathroom because I thought the stomach ache came with the bathroom. Like I thought if I use the bathroom downstairs, I'm going to get a stomach ache.
Yeah.
So for 6 years, I didn't use that bathroom. I only used the upstairs. And if the upstairs was busy, I'd be like, I'm going to wait. I'm going to have to wait because the downstairs.
You better wait.
Downstairs is going to give me a stomach ache. So since then, I've always had whatever stomach issues. And it's really like a lot of self-fulfilling prophecy type thing. So what I started doing to help myself is contemplate worst case scenario and be okay with that. B, I just started throwing myself in the situation. Like I will just have to go and do the thing that I want to do. Now, this is mainly if it's not involving other people, because there is a side where it's like, okay, so I went to a mission trip once in South Africa, and I was with a whole lot of people. And when you're on mission trip, the world doesn't even come close to revolving around you. No. It's about everybody else. And I remember being out in the middle of just the hood in South Africa, and I had to use the bathroom, and they, everybody had to scramble to get me to one of the guys that we were with, to his like grandma's house, who was in the hood too.
Aww.
And it was a big ordeal, and it was like all about me having to use the bathroom. So I'm literally taking focus away from people ministering because I needed to use the bathroom. So I felt hella bad about that.
Lover.
Which is why now, where I'm like, if I don't feel good about something, I won't go with a group of people, because I don't want my possible stomach trauma. It doesn't help that I have a weak stomach either. I don't want that trauma to ruin everybody else's fun. So what I do is I take solo quest and facing my fears. So, it's a really big deal for me to just eat at the house and then jump in the car and go somewhere. And I know it's a big deal, but I literally am like, not gonna worry about it. Just gonna do it. Get my keys, go. I'm gonna go. And just go.
So in the same way Brandon wakes up from a panic attack and does his like grounding, like, I'm here, I'm okay, my heart rate's going down, I'm here, I'm okay. Manny's doing the same thing after he eats a meal to get in the car and drive somewhere.
Yeah, I'm just freaking trying to like be like, I'm gonna be good. Worst comes to worst, pull over. And I've literally thought this. I'll pull over, take a crap on the side of the street. Who cares? What they gonna do? You know what I'm saying? Like, I've thought that.
I've already hyping yourself up.
I'm like, because it's the only way to like really like, what is the worst that can happen? Okay, I shit myself. Then I turn around, make a U-turn, go back home.
I'm just laughing at the image of you like hyping yourself up, like walking out the house with like faux confidence, like being like, I'm good, I'm getting in my car.
Well, I don't even make a big deal about it. I just go. Hey. I just go, and I tell myself I'm not gonna think about it. I'm just like, I'm just gonna go. I'm good.
That's good.
And then I find myself completely fine. And you know how sometimes I be telling you, I'll be like, oh, I had to use the bathroom. And I typically will not leave a place until I have to use the bathroom. Mm-hmm. And then recently I've been kind of like, it's 20 minutes home. I could do it. And I'll go.
So
having
proud
to use the
of you,
bathroom.
babe. I am.
It's so weird to think that, saying it out loud. People are probably like, bruh, it's so whatever. But this was something that you literally kept me from doing so much.
Dude, even when I first met you until now, like I've seen improvement in that.
Yeah, I'm just like,
at first, when I remember one of the first times you told me about that, I was like, wait, for real? It's like, that's it's like a thing in the back of my mind. I'm thinking, okay, all right.
Okay, good job.
We all got our things, I guess.
It's such a big deal. It's like the one thing I don't really get anxious for stuff or scared for stuff. It's just that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And it was all because of two instances, the mission trip thing and the thing that happened when I was a kid. Wow. I realized, there are times where I won't have control of my body, and that scares me. And it doesn't help. Some people have strong stomachs, like just biologically, they can eat anything and it won't affect them. If they eat something bad, they're still good. Maybe they'll like have a little bit of gas, but they're straight. Or if they have to use the bathroom, we have an hour. Oh, I'm good. I can. And I'm so jealous of those people. My bandmates used to be those people where they're like, oh, I'm good. We could wait. And I've just never been that. If I eat the wrong thing, it immediately hits me. So I've had bad instances where I get caught in a bad situation driving to LAX once. And it's always a pain in the ass, which is because the traffic. Ugh. One time I pulled up on the ramp, and it was just traffic from the ramp down at our house when we lived in Sherman Oaks. And I had to use the bathroom. So I pulled over because I saw a construction site. They were doing construction on the ramp. I pulled over, jumped out, went into the porta potty. 5 minutes later, came out, and everybody was looking at me like, did this guy just freaking jump out of his car and jump into a porta potty? And I literally did, because I'm just like, I had to go. I couldn't hold it.
Did I tell you about the time I did that in traffic on the 5 freeway?
Yeah, you went behind a bush and everybody was clapping.
Yeah,
I was so proud of you.
It was traffic that bad?
I was on the 5 coming home to LA from the Bay.
Yeah.
And there was a car accident. It's 2 lanes.
Oh, man.
There's only 2 lanes on the 5 in that stretch of the area. and there was an accident. So it was bumper to bumper. We were not going anywhere.
Yeah.
There was cars, diesel trucks, all kinds of people. I had to pee so bad. So I couldn't just go on the side of the road because everybody will see me.
Yeah.
But way out into the field, there was like some bushes and like a tree. So I grabbed some napkins from the glove and I go running way out to the bushes. I go pee, and then on my way back, people are honking, cheering for me, like, woo. And I'm just like, yeah, I did it.
It's situations like that where you're like, worst case scenario, like what's the worst that could happen? That has been something that has helped me get over anxiety. Worst case scenario. What is the worst that can happen? Okay, this is the worst. I can deal with that. I can deal with that. Now, granted, I don't think that works for a lot of things.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of things that maybe have more severe consequences. Like, I think I'd have a real anxious problem if I'm like, oh, the worst case scenario, I'm going to end up in prison. I cannot deal with that. Like, as my biggest fear. This is my biggest fear. But that's just how I've been able to overcome some stuff. And it's been cool.
Breathing techniques, meditation, journaling, therapy, talking,
facing that fear,
facing the fear, doing self work, finding where does this stem from, where does this come from, which self work is hard work.
It's not sexy.
No, man. It's really, I mean, dealing with the thing that you don't want to deal with, and and how do you do that self-work? There's a bunch of different ways, different meditations, guided meditations that lead you to your inner child, having a conversation with your inner child, where at that point maybe somebody be like, oh, that's woo woo, like I don't want to do like all that woo woo stuff, but oh my god, it's so powerful. And it's honestly, it's the same thing as like in sozo prayers, where they're like, okay, go back to where that conversation with that person happened, and right before they tell you what they're gonna say, look around the room. Tell me, where's Jesus at in the room? Right? Yeah. And they guide you through that. And like, what is Jesus doing in the room? And like, oh, he's covering my ears because I wasn't supposed to hear that. What, in the same way you would do that in like a sozo prayer session type thing. That's what you do in meditation with your inner child. And you go back and you talk to your little girl or your little boy inside, and you're like, hey, let's talk. I'm here. What's up? What do you need? I'm right here. I'm sorry if I abandoned you. I'm sorry if I left you. I'm right. And then you start listening to what your inner child tells you. And then next thing you know, you come out of this meditation, you're like, whoa, I think I'm still angry at so-and-so, you know, and you have all this revelation when you come out of it. Things like that are so powerful, but it's hard work. Yeah. And
it's not a one-time occurrence.
No.
And that's because I've had a couple of sozos, you know, and I've gone back to different like places in my life that were kind of traumatic or started something within me. And unfortunately, I think that is a powerful tool, but it does not replace the process. And I think sometimes having a sozo, it's kind of like a spiritual like detox, like detox on steroids, I call it, because it's usually like really powerful.
Which really quick, a sozo is, for those who don't know what a sozo is.
It's like an inner healing session that a lot of churches will offer.
Gotcha.
And so it's kind of like there's someone there in the room with you, and they'll guide you, and then you guys will kind of just be there, and they'll be like, all right, we're going to ask the Holy Spirit, what is it he wants to show us today? And then, you know, usually it's like a painful moment in your life. So you go back to this moment. And then as you're kind of in this moment within yourself, this person who's guiding you is like, all right, now I want you to ask Jesus, where is he at in this moment?
Right.
And, you know, for a lot of people, they recognize, oh, Jesus was here, which is a very powerful truth, right? Jesus is there, like as in present tense, as in past tense, as in future tense, right? But the way that God works is, and we've heard a lot of powerful things, like people who struggle with some of these illnesses and disorders that we've talked about today. Some preachers or pastors will have the very small-minded notion that, hey, God can deliver you of that in one moment here at the altar versus 10 years of what therapy could do. And again, I think that God really believes in process. Right? When we get saved, or as the scripture would call it, the process of sanctification, it isn't just a one-time occurrence. it's an occurrence that continues to happen. We continue to get sanctified day by day and renewed. So it's not just a one time I said the sinner's prayer, I signed the paper, I committed my life to Jesus today, you know?
Right.
And then all of a sudden I'm saved for life. Like, no, you're getting saved day by day, right? But with that, I think that God really believes in walking us through things, because there's so many powerful lessons and things that we learn about him, that we learn about ourselves walking that road out. So that's why I'm like, hey, couple sozo with some of the things we mentioned. That's fine. But don't just rely on sozo to just get the job done for you. Because it's gonna, that self-work is not a one-time thing. You don't show up one day and you're like, all right, on July 4th, I'm going to show up to my self-work session and we're going to be good for the next 20 years. You know, it's going to be like a daily thing. And so,
man, we hope you guys have gotten this. We have to do another one, so we're gonna wrap this one up. But we want so badly to hear your thoughts on these things. And if you guys want us to do a part 2, please send us messages in where we want to, or where you would like us to dive in deeper. And maybe next time we'll actually have somebody who's maybe a clinical therapist who deals with nothing but mental illness, or maybe it's somebody who is in the field and they themselves deal with mental illness. You know, it would be great to have somebody that has walked that out in the process that we're even talking about from a medical standpoint. So just hit us up. Let us know what y'all think. And if you want us to do a part 2, diving into something more specific, we can make that happen. So we're so grateful for you guys. Again, hit that like, subscribe, all the good stuff. Patreon, come join us. We promise you'll enjoy it if you want to keep seeing this thing grow and move. And we love you guys, man. Thanks for sharing your time with us. It really means the world. Like we always say, we pray you find a seat at the table, but if you don't, you're always welcome at ours.
Cheers.
Cheers, y'all.
cheers.